Well, amidst high inflation, a high cost of living, and more Canadians struggling to make ends meet as we're heading into the winter, Christopher Freeland, in an interview last night, said something that, frankly, quite a lot of Canadians are pissed off about as a solution on how they could solve their problems with this high cost of living.
I agree with your basic premise, Mercedes. I think that things are really challenging for Canadian families. And I think Canadian families are looking really closely at all of their expenses. I personally, as a mother and wife, look carefully at my credit card bill once a month. And last Sunday, I said to the kids, "You're older now, you don't want to watch Disney anymore. Let's cut that Disney Plus subscription." So we cut it. It's only $13.99 a month that we're saving, but every little bit helps. And I think every mother in Canada is doing that right now. And I want to say to all of those mothers, I believe that I need to take exactly the same approach with the federal government's finances, because that's the money of Canadians.
Now, this response came after she was asked a question saying, have you ever looked inside of the government to find areas in the government where you're spending too much, where you can maybe cut back to help us be in a better financial situation? To which she replied, yes, we actually found $3.8 billion, but we'll get into the odd place that is actually from just in a minute here. And the reason for this interview in the first place was the fact that the government put out their mini budget last week on Thursday, where they said for the very first time, it looks like we're going into a recession, which is defined as at least 6 months of the economy not growing anymore or even declining, right? Going into that negative territory. You can check out a full recap video of that budget. I'll link it right here so you can take a look at it. I go over line by line what is included inside of this budget. But the one interesting thing is that there's not a whole lot inside of this budget in terms of new help for Canadians. Now, some highlights of the budget are workers' benefits split up. Right now, there's a Canada's worker benefit. Normally, you apply for it at tax time, but now they're going to make it so it's 4 quarterly payments that go direct to Canadians, as well as a multi-generational tax credit, making it easier for Canadians to renovate their homes so their entire family, multi-generation, can live in it. These are some things the Liberals will point to as their help, as well as the GST credit that many people would have received in their accounts as of Friday or in the coming days. Again, I made a video right here. I'll link it so you can find out how to check if you've gotten that and how much you're going to receive from that. But in terms of help for Canadians, that's pretty much all that they have inside of this mini budget, which makes the comments of Freeland here saying, hey, you can just simply cut your Disney Plus account and that should solve your problems, at least that's how it's coming across to Canadians. That makes it all the more rich. She goes on to enthusiastically point out that these GST credits that have just gone out could pay for a family of 6's groceries for half a month.
So there is some good news, and that is that on Friday, our GST checks went out to Canadians. That is nearly $500 for a family. And, you know, you've just said it was $1,088 for a family of 4 in Ottawa. So it's not going to cover everything, but $500 for that family is going to cover half of their grocery bill in November, and that's going to help. And I'm glad that we're able to do that.
Now, the fact that there was no new help included in this mini budget is something both the NDP and the Conservatives are pretty frustrated about, and they're both sort of working together, at least on one thing, to try to help Canadians in the coming months, and that is to eliminate the GST on home heating over the winter with energy prices higher. That's what they're currently working on, and they were frustrated not to see that in the federal government's budget, especially when we look at other countries that have included more direct help for their citizens as we enter this higher cost of living era. Now, the context for this Disney Plus comment that has so many people so pissed off is when the reporter asked, hey, are you looking inside of the government for any excess spending, any ways that you're not being financially efficient? To which Freeland responded, hey, actually, we've found $3.8 billion, to which she sort of pats herself on the back for. We're finding inefficiencies inside of the government, but I did a little bit of digging, and I'm going to show you here just after this clip where this $3.8 billion is actually coming from.
And the $3 billion was supposed to happen now. And actually in the fall economic statement that I tabled on Thursday, I said, you know what? we've found more than 3 billion. We've found 3.8 billion.
But here's the part of the mini budget that was released on Thursday that talks about where this $3.8 billion actually came from. They say in budget 2022, they announced that they were going to look for spending that they could remove from the budget up to $3 billion over the next 4 years. But they say, hey, we actually found $3.8 billion. But the reason for this $3.8 billion being removed is due to the lower than expected uptake of COVID-19 supports in 2021 and 2022. Now, these are programs like the CRB, the Canada Wage Subsidy, small business supports. So it seems that they allocated a certain amount of money for this, but they didn't actually use it because people didn't apply for it. Now, the reason I have a little bit of a problem with this is because notably, and everyone tends to remember this, all of these benefits got a lot more difficult to qualify for and to actually be eligible for it as they hit the end. So it kind of is like the government patting itself on the back for not spending this money, that they made it harder for themselves to spend because Canadians couldn't actually access it unless they were in very specific situations. They also say that this year they're going to start finding $6 billion over 5 years to remove from the budget to get rid of this excess spending, but they say that we're going to have to wait till April for them to find out how they're actually going to be finding this money. So it remains to be seen if they actually have any real data on ways that they're going to reduce their spending here. But of course, Canadians' reactions to Freeland suggesting that, hey, I'm making a sacrifice here by cutting my Disney Plus. All Canadians need to make sacrifices. Obviously, this has frustrated a lot of people. Take a look here. We're going to look at some takes here. Freeland makes almost $3,600 per week, but decided to use cutting out her Disney Plus subscription as an idea for Canadians to save money as every penny counts. Madness, sort of using this as saying, hey, I'm doing things too, while other Canadians are doing things to make ends meet. And another one here, many Canadians have difficulty putting food on the table and paying rent, so this is more than a bit tone deaf, but perhaps doing without Disney Plus is really a major hardship for Freeland and her family. And another one here from Reddit, Freeland makes $270,000 last year base salary, and I'm pretty sure her husband works as well. If people of their stature have to make decisions to cut Disney Plus, what are common plebs like us supposed to do? This is really out of touch. And they reply here saying, how tone deaf is this? I get home from my 14-hour day and can't have the comfort waiting for me at home now. How about you take a pay cut? And that last point really hits home, because if a family making over $300,000 a year is having to cut back and cut their Disney Plus accounts, then what about the families who are just struggling to get by making minimum wage, or maybe even the workers in Ontario right now who are having to fight tooth and nail to make anything more than $39,000 a year doing one of the most difficult jobs in the world? Now, my take on all of this is that anyone, Christopher Freeland or your buddy next door who tells you the solution to your pocketbook woes is to cut out your discretionary spending, your $10 worth of coffee over the course of a week, stop going to Tim's, cut off your Disney Plus. While certainly that will make a small impact, the larger impact can be made by, of course, focusing on the larger expenses in your life. And for most people, the largest expense is their housing costs. By doing things like house hacking and rental hacking, you can greatly reduce your largest expense, which is your housing. And you, of course, can focus on other things like your car and your other large payments. Focus on the large things first, not the small things. That's my personal take. But of course, I talk about that a lot more in the course, which you can find in the description if you're interested. But I'm curious what you think about all of this. Do you think that Freeland seems a little bit out of touch with this? Or do you think that this was just a simple word slip up and really the help that she's providing is adequate for Canadians as we go into the winter? Let me know down in the description below what you think. I read every single one and try to get back to as many as I possibly can. And with all of that said, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Really hope this video helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.